Let's get one thing straight. Starting a car company is not for the faint of heart, it's for madmen. People with more ambition than sense. And back in 1913, two such chaps, Lionel Martin and Robert Bamford, decided to give it a go. They were selling cars made by a company called Singer, but they had bigger ideas. They wanted to build their own, a proper sports car, one that would leave everything else in the dust. This wasn't just about getting from A to B, it was about doing it with a massive grin on your face, a thunderous noise behind you, and a complete disregard for the price of petrol. They had a vision, you see, a brilliant, slightly unhinged vision for a British car that was fast, beautiful, and utterly desirable. So where did the name come from? It wasn't pulled out of a hat. Oh no, it was earned. Lionel Martin was a bit of a racer himself. He used to thunder up a hill climb course in Buckinghamshire called Aston Hill. One day, driving a prototype of their own design, he won. He absolutely smashed it. So, in a moment of pure, unadulterated genius, they decided to name their creation after that glorious victory. Aston Martin. It just sounds right, doesn't it? It has a certain ring to it, a sound of power, of prestige, and of a man who just conquered a very steep bit of road. It's a name born from speed and success, which is exactly what the company would become famous for. Building the first car, however, was a bit of a faff. They cobbled together their first prototype, affectionately known as Coal Scuttle, in a small London workshop. It was a simple two-seater sports car with a Coventry Simplex engine. It was light, it was nimble, and it laid the groundwork for everything that was to come. But then the First World War happened. Everything stopped. Martin and Bamford had to go off and do their bit, and the dream of building a fleet of brilliant sports cars was put on hold. It's a recurring theme with Aston Martin, this. Just when things start looking good, something comes along to throw a spanner in the works. It's a miracle they ever got going at all. After the war, they picked up where they left off. The first official Aston Martin production car was built, and the company started to make a name for itself on the racetrack. They weren't building cars for your granny to pop to the shops in. These were serious machines. They were entered into races like the French Grand Prix and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. They were often underfunded and running on a shoestring budget, but they had the spirit. They were the underdog, the plucky Brit taking on the giants of European motorsport, and people loved them for it. This was the beginning of the Aston Martin DNA, a blend of raw performance, stunning looks, and a fighting spirit that refused to be beaten. For decades, Aston Martin pottered along, building some truly beautiful and fast cars. The DB series, named after David Brown, who bought the company in 1947, was particularly special. These were proper grand tourers, cars you could use to cross a continent in a single tire-squealing bound. But Aston Martin was still a niche brand. It was known to car enthusiasts, but it wasn't a household name. Then, in 1964, a man in a sharp suit changed everything. A fictional spy, a man called Bond, James Bond. When Sean Connery got behind the wheel of a silver birch Aston Martin DB5 in the film Goldfinger, the world went completely mad for it. Suddenly, this wasn't just a car anymore, it was a cultural icon. The DB5 was the coolest thing on four wheels. It had machine guns hiding behind the indicators. It had a revolving number plate for confusing the police. And best of all, it had an ejector seat. An actual ejector seat. Every schoolboy in the world wanted one. Every man who saw the film dreamed of owning one. It was the perfect product placement. It cemented Aston Martin's image as the ultimate gentleman's express, sophisticated, impossibly handsome, and with a very dangerous secret hidden up its sleeve. The Bond connection was a stroke of marketing genius that money simply couldn't buy. The DB5 became a legend overnight. It perfectly encapsulated the swagger and style of the 1960s. It was fast, with a 4-litre straight-six engine that made a magnificent noise. It was beautiful, with that iconic grille and those sweeping lines penned by Italian design house Carrozzeria Touring Superleggera. It was, and still is, one of the most beautiful cars ever made, full stop. The fact that it was driven by the world's most famous spy just propelled it into the stratosphere. It became more than metal, glass and rubber. It became a fantasy, a symbol of a life of adventure, danger and impeccable taste. The DB5 defined Aston Martin for a generation. This relationship with James Bond has continued for over half a century. From the DBS in On Her Majesty's Secret Service to the V8 Vantage in the Living Daylights and the modern DB10 and DBS Superleggera in the Daniel Craig era, an Aston Martin has been Bond's car of choice. It's a partnership that just works. You can't imagine 007 driving a Toyota Prius, can you? It has to be an Aston. It's a brand that represents the very best of British understated, elegant, but with a brutal punch when you need it. The Bond films didn't just sell cars. They sold a dream, and at the heart of that dream was a silver Aston Martin. Now you'd think that with all this fame and glory, Aston Martin would be rolling in money. You would be wrong, spectacularly wrong. The history of this company is a roller coaster of financial chaos. It has been bought and sold more times than a second-hand sofa. It has lurched from one crisis to another, teetering on the brink of collapse so often it's a wonder the doors are still open. David Brown, the man who gave us the legendary DB cars, had to sell up in the 1970s because the company was hemorrhaging cash. It was a sad state of affairs. Building magnificent hand-built cars is ruinously expensive, especially when you don't sell very many of them. Throughout the 70s and 80s, the company was passed between various owners, each one trying and mostly failing to make it profitable. They produced some incredible cars during this time, like the brutish, wedge-shaped Lagonda and the muscular V8 Vantage. These were cars with immense presence and power. The V8 Vantage was often called Britain's first supercar, a proper hairy-chested machine that could take on a Ferrari and win. But they were built in tiny numbers, and the company was always struggling. It was a constant battle for survival, a testament to the dedication of the engineers and craftsmen who kept the faith even when the bailiffs were knocking at the door. The turning point really came in 1987 when the Ford Motor Company stepped in. Now, Ford's involvement with prestigious British brands hasn't always been a roaring success, but with Aston Martin they got it right. They provided the investment and the stability that the company so desperately needed. They didn't try to turn it into a manufacturer of boring saloon cars. They understood what made Aston Martin special. They poured money into a new factory at Gaydon and funded the development of a new generation of cars. This was the moment the comeback truly began. The company could finally look to the future with a bit of confidence. This new era gave us the DB7 in 1994. It was a stunningly beautiful car designed by Ian Callum, and it was a massive hit. It was the car that saved Aston Martin. It sold in numbers the company had only dreamed of before. It was still an Aston Martin through and through, fast, elegant and desirable, but it was also more reliable and better built thanks to the Ford backing. The DB7 was followed by the V12 Vanquish, another Bond car, and then the DB9. The company was back on its feet, stronger than ever before. It had stared into the abyss, and against all odds it had climbed back out. So what makes an Aston Martin so special today? In a world of electric cars that accelerate in silence and SUVs that look like angry kitchen appliances, Aston Martin still stands for something. It stands for passion, it stands for noise, it stands for beauty. When you see a modern Aston, whether it's a Vantage, a DB12 or the DBS, you don't just see a mode of transport. You see a piece of sculpture. The lines are perfect, the proportions are just right. They are cars that make you stop and stare. They have a soul. Something that is desperately lacking in so many modern vehicles. They feel special because they are. The company is still independent, still forging its own path. Yes, they have partnerships like the one with Mercedes-AMG for their engines, which is a very sensible move. It means they get world-class reliable power units, allowing them to focus on what they do best, designing breathtaking bodies and crafting exquisite interiors. Step inside a modern Aston and you are surrounded by leather, carbon fiber and aluminium. It feels like a bespoke suit. It's a wonderful place to be. It's a car that makes every journey an event. Even if you're just stuck in traffic on the M25, you're not just driving, you're having an experience. And let's not forget the noise. Oh, the glorious noise. In an age where engines are being silenced and sanitized, an Aston Martin still bellows. The roar from a V8 or a V12 engine as it climbs towards the red line is one of the greatest sounds in the automotive world. It's a primal, exhilarating symphony of internal combustion. It's the sound of power. It's the sound of fun. It's a middle finger to the boring, silent future that seems to be rushing towards us. An Aston Martin is an emotional purchase. You don't buy one with your head, you buy one with your heart and probably your ears. Ultimately, people love Aston Martins because they are more than just cars. They are a statement. They represent a dream of speed, style and adventure that was born on a hill climb over a century ago and immortalized on the silver screen. They have survived financial ruin, world wars and questionable ownership to continue building some of the most desirable cars on the planet. They are proof that even in this modern, sensible world, there is still a place for something that is outrageously beautiful, incredibly fast, and just a little bit silly. And for that, we should all be profoundly grateful. Long may it continue.